Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for coming out tonight. We appreciate it. We have some lovely guest speakers here. Michael Stoops is here with the National Coalition for Homelessness out of Washington, D.C., so we're going to let him get started and introduce everyone. Thanks for coming.
Good evening. My name is Michael Stoops. I'm the community organizer for the National Coalition for the Homeless. We have done work with Elon University students for a number of years, and we look forward to coming down for Awareness Week each November. I've had the opportunity of working with homeless folks for over 4 decades in all regions of the country. The National Coalition was founded in one of the founders back in 1982. We're the nation's oldest and largest national advocacy group. We do work similar to that of the NAACP or the Children's Defense Fund. We're not as big or strong or historic, but we're very grassroots, very cutting edge. We do work on all areas related to poverty, housing, healthcare, economic justice, and civil rights. We recently weighed in on in Raleigh, North Carolina. The city was starting to enforce a permit that said that any local group that wanted to share food with homeless people in downtown Raleigh had to get a permit and pay $800 a day in order to share food with the homeless. The pressure from around the country got to Raleigh City Council to make that policy inactive. The National Coalition, we strive to end homelessness through lobbying, through litigation. I'm proud to say that my organization has sued every branch of the federal government with the exception of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Commission. And the moment that they take away fishing licenses from our homeless friends, we will sue the Fish and Wildlife Commission. We organize, we do voter registration, we do public education. Tonight you're going to witness our Faces of Homelessness Speakers Bureau. Tonight there are nearly 700,000 homeless Americans, 38% are families, and we just had a record for the first time in the history of modern day homelessness. We now have over 1.2 million children who are homeless and who are, thank God, enrolled in the public school system. So homelessness increased under my watch, and my challenge to you is that as you go to college, as you look for a career, homelessness is increasing under your watch. And we believe that the two groups of people who can end homelessness are formerly homeless people themselves, and also young people who are hopefully idealistic, and they keep wondering, asking the question, why? Why do we allow people to become homeless in the American society? Our first speaker this evening and the panel will each speak for a short period of time, and we'll do questions and answers. The first speaker is John Harrison Jr. Please welcome John.
Hi. Thanks for inviting us here tonight. To be a part of Awareness Week here. And I just wanted to say what a turnout. It's obviously a very high awareness of Awareness Week. And that's great. Okay, this issue of homelessness comes with some special challenges. There's a lot of great causes that people find, passion about. But this one about homelessness, well, you can plainly see I'm not the cute little kid with cancer, okay? And quite honestly, I think there's some unfavorable associations with people experiencing homelessness. Wouldn't you agree? I mean, not necessarily what you yourselves think, but what's out there as a typical image of a person who's homeless. Just 1 or 2 word stereotypes. You can shout it out and I'll repeat it so everybody can hear. Please don't be polite. Lazy. What else? Dirty. Yeah, one of my former colleagues say, we're not dirty, we're funky. That's what they say. What else? Drunk. Yeah. What else? So how about High, yeah, on drugs, yeah. Drunk, on drugs, lazy, what else? How about their mental health? Crazy, yeah, see, so we've already got lazy, crazy, and on drugs, right? I mean, if there was like 7 dwarfs of homelessness, what do you think their names would be? You know, shifty, sketchy, scruffy, you know, what else? Edgy. Okay, but I want to admit that I had a typical image of a person who was homeless, and it was a single older male, kind of scruffy looking. He looked just like me, except he was also kind of shuffling down the street like he was talking to himself, you know? That was my typical image. But now, you know, with all these phones and everything, it seems like everybody looks like they're talking to themselves, walking down the streets. You can't really tell who's homeless anymore by what they're, you know, muttering as they're walking around. But, okay, so how do people become homeless? What do you think some of the primary causes here in the U.S. are? Job loss. What else? Some of the leading causes. We'll get back to that. Divorce, yeah, broken families, I think, is around number 3. Domestic violence is actually the number 1 reason that women experience homelessness. But actually, the top 2, I think, are simply the lack of affordable housing and the lack of access to affordable health care. And that's why our organization focuses on those areas, in addition to, as Michael mentioned, the civil rights of people experiencing homelessness. And, you know, just being unable to make a living wage is a big part of it as well. Okay, so if I sound like I know a little something about homelessness, I want to admit that there was a time in my life when I didn't know anything about homelessness except for one thing. The only thing I knew about homelessness was it wasn't part of my life. That's all I knew. And I never thought a day would come when I would need to know anything about homelessness, okay? Now, none of us, you know, could choose the families that we're born into, but had I been able to choose, I couldn't have chosen any better. Come from a, you know, a great family. My folks made a warm, safe place for us kids. We were surrounded by lots of love and Pop-Tarts and stuff like that. I was just a regular kid, okay? I got good advice, which unfortunately I didn't take all of, but I did listen when my folks say do well in school and you'll do well in life. And I did so well in school that I thought I was ready to take on the world right out of high school. So instead of going on to college like I could have and I should have, and like you obviously have been bright enough to do, I went out and got a job. Does anybody want to guess why I went out and got a job? Yeah, it came with a paycheck. See, so now I have my paycheck and I rented a place and I bought a car and I did all these things that convinced me I was doing okay. I could sure say this: nobody's got to look out for me. I take care of myself. See, at the time, I didn't see what was wrong with that. You know, I had some success, small success. It's a company I worked for. You wouldn't know its name, but its clients would be familiar. You know, Microsoft, Abercrombie & Fitch, Fuji, Adidas, Godiva. This place did fantastic. Except it did so well that it wasn't just those things that people wanted to buy. It was a company. And once the company changed hands, they made some changes, and one of those was to eliminate the position that I had there. But like I just said, I can take care of myself. Hey, this is no big deal. I can always get another job. Except before I got another job, my house burned down. And I've been naive in how I bought my house, so it wasn't any insurance coming my way. I'd have been homeless right then, but I had some kind neighbors, and they let me stay in the shed behind their house where, you know, at least I had a place to lay my head and figure some things out. And guess what I figured out first? I should have gone to college. See, looking for that next job is when it finally caught up with me. I didn't have the same credentials that other prospective candidates have, but, you know, I was actually fortunate. I found out about a grant program for displaced workers where I could go to college after all, get some 21st century job skills, and, you know, I believed that things were going to work out. but what I had help with was tuition, not living. And I'm sure some of you can relate to the difference between those things. So yeah, I had to work. I had a job as a courier, you know, delivering packages and everything. You guys, anybody know how to make a lot of money doing that? So you deliver a lot of packages. So anyway, in the process of doing that, I kind of ran my car into the ground, and it was very expensive to fix. And so when it broke down again, I didn't have the money to fix it. I spent my last little bit getting it towed off of the highway into a shopping center parking lot. And that's where I spent the night. And you know, looking back, do you know how out of touch I was with how desperate my circumstances already were? Guess what I was telling myself, sleeping in the broken down car in the parking lot? At least I'm not homeless. What? I'll tell you, when it came crystal clear that I was homeless is when that car got towed away. And how do you think I felt at that time? As somebody has lonely? Not yet. Helpless? Lost? I'm hoping somebody would say it so I wouldn't have to, because that's what it is. I was scared. I was scared. Okay, but why? Why was I scared? Well, I was scared in large part because of the way I had lived my own life, proudly saying I take care of myself. The harsher truth is that's all I was doing, was taking care of myself. I wasn't really looking out for anybody else but myself. And that's why I was scared, because I didn't see why there should be some big long line of people waiting to look out for me just because I'd fallen on hard times. Why should they? Now, I was very, very wrong about that. But, you know, at the time, it seemed like I had turned invisible. It seemed like people would walk by me like I wasn't even there. It wasn't always true. It wasn't true when I was trying to sneak through the lobby of a fancy hotel to get to the restroom, but then people would notice me when I was hoping they wouldn't. Now, what do you think would be hard about being homeless on a daily basis, let's say? Asking for money, yeah, that's not easy. What else? Hygiene, yeah, no kidding. What else? Food, something to eat, yeah. Staying warm or staying cool, a safe place to sleep. I won't say I was prepared for those things, but I knew they were headed my way. What I was totally unprepared for was the way it seemed like people were responding to me because I was homeless. You know, a couple of examples, you know, riding the bus. I ride the bus, I watch it get so crowded that people were standing in the aisles, but there wasn't always an empty seat left. Yeah, it was right next to me, the homeless guy. I go into a restaurant, I go in there hoping to get the 2-for-1 deal, and for the person experiencing homelessness, you know what that is? 2 for 1, it's the warmth and the food for the price of the food. It's 2 for 1. Anyway, I sat down, they took my order, so I was optimistic. But when they brought me my food, it was packed up to go. See, that was the message, go. So now, I wasn't just homeless. I was homeless and starting to feel some kind of way that wasn't good. Now, don't get me wrong, it wasn't everyone that treated me like that. You know, there was people who said hello. There was people who asked me how I was doing and meant it. And there was people who asked me my name so they could say, how are you doing, John? See, it's easy to get lost out there. I lose access to places where I could maintain my hygiene. I understood I was taking on an appearance that would make you uncomfortable, you know. My answer to that was get a job at a health club where I had access to a shower and a locker and I could get cleaned up, and didn't seem like people treated me so poorly. But what I wasn't doing working at that health club was making a living wage. You see, I wasn't making enough to put a roof back over my head, and what does that take? What do you think a living wage is? What does a person need to make working 40 hours a week? Any guesses? Yes. 25 an hour. You know what? Where I was homeless, that is almost exactly what it is, and that turns into $50,000 a year. Now, the national average is less, is maybe still around 18 or so. But there's no place left in our country where a person making minimum wage can afford their own home. And, you know, that job ended, and I was having trouble, and my situation wasn't looking so good. One of the bright spots, though, was, you know, finding out about the National Coalition for the Homeless and being asked to participate in things like this. And the other thing that happened for me was that somebody asked for my help in spite of my situation and my appearance and my circumstances, you know. So I initially got off the street helping a woman that was in the wheelchair. And she said, hey, you can run some errands. You can, you know, go to the store, do the laundry. I'll let you crash on the couch. And that was great. Not just because I got off the street, but because I felt useful again, you know. And somebody was glad to see me, you know. And so I want to say it seems like I'm getting some traction now. I'm getting back on my feet. And to have escaped, you know, this condition of homelessness that I experienced, I don't want to give, by any means, the mistaken impression that I pulled myself up by my bootstraps, okay? You see, what's happened is along the way, is people helped me through some very discouraging times, and this one time in particular I want to mention, okay? It's one time that I was pretty much all the way broken down, and I was actually weeping, you know. I don't want to be homeless, you know, and it's a guy that was walking by, and he saw me. And he kind of stopped, and he put his hand on my shoulder. And he says, hey man, are you all right? And, of course, you know, I tried to brush it off. I said, yeah, I'm okay. He said, there's a church just right up the hill. If you go up there, you can get warm. And if you tell them what's going on, maybe they can help you. And I didn't go to the church that day, he said, but that's partly because I had some stubborn pride that was also a challenge for me, getting past homelessness. But I wanted to make sure that you understand that even though I didn't go there, I had already been helped. You see, he helped me by not just walking by. He stopped, you know. And I don't have all the answers about homelessness, but it's a couple things I want to pass along that it's just as easy to offer words of encouragement as some hurtful comment to a person who's experiencing homelessness. Just as easy to offer a friendly smile as to pretend not to see what's right in front of us. And the other thing that is priceless is information. When I was homeless, I got some information about where I could take a shower, and that was great. I'll tell you what. Hey, before I pass it on to my colleagues, I want to ask if anybody's seen Mythbusters. It's a show on TV. Okay, so is this true or is it a myth? Are homeless people lazy? Okay, so I'm gonna describe to you what happened when I found out where I could take a shower. It's a place called So Others Might Eat. I said, oh, great. And all I had to do was get up at 6:30 in the morning, get on the bus, get over there by 7 so I could sign on the list. And if I got there by 7, I could get on the list, and the list was 15-minute slots of time, and my slot was going to be at 9:15. So sure enough, at 9:30, I was fresh out of the shower, and all I had to do was get back on the bus. And so, hey, by 10 o'clock, it's no big deal. I only had 3.5 hours invested in taking a shower that day. And that's what everything turns into for the person experiencing homelessness. It takes longer. It's more frustrating. And that's why even some small kindness you could offer to someone can make so much difference. But we're going to find out some more about that when I pass it off to my colleague. And so I want to pass it off to Deja. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm very excited to be here. Yeah, this is really, really cool. You guys look really enthusiastic. This is a really good turnout. My name is Deja, like he introduced me, and I encountered homelessness when I was 13 years old. I'm currently 17, by the way. But yeah, I encountered it when I was 13 years old, and I came home, and we were having a good old day, and I was in my room, and we lived in a nice house. My mom had her own business. She's an entrepreneur. And she came and she said, we have to go. So I put on my clothes. I'm like, okay, we're going to the grocery store. We're going to the movies maybe. We're going somewhere. But let's put on some regular clothes and let's move forward. Then she says, no, we have to go, like everything you have. And I'm an only child, so I have a lot. And she says, pack up everything you have because we have to go. So I'm stuck because I don't know what that means still, although it seems pretty common in knowledge, go. But she called my best friend's mom, and we sat out in front of the car, and I literally cried for about 30 minutes because I realized that this was getting real, that we didn't know where we were going, and we also had to go immediately. So kind of fast forwarding through time, me and my mother ended up being homeless. So luckily, during that time period, we were able to keep our car, and off and on, we were in places, and oftentimes we were in our car as well. And during that time period, we had to stay close to school, whereas other times we had somewhere to stay, but it may have been 2 and 3 hours away from school. So we would drive every morning back and forth to school. So some people may be wondering, okay, so did you tell anyone, or who did you talk to, or how did you make it through middle school homeless with nowhere to go? How did you have sleepovers? How did you go to parties? How did you do all that? Well, I didn't do none of that. I did some sleeping over, and my best friend, we've still been best friends. We've been best friends for about 10 years. And so, I did sleeping over at her house, but there was no, come over to Deja's house, let's have fun. And there was no discussion as to where I live. But I was still able to maintain some sense of normal lifestyle because I did have a best friend that I was very close to. So that was pretty cool. But during 7th grade, that was a very hard time for me because I was in a school that I wasn't really familiar with. We had moved to a different state. And so there I had to become accustomed to different people and the way they did things, and it just wasn't what I saw. Luckily, I was able to get close with a few teachers who still did not know the circumstances I was under and did not know how my homework got completed or didn't understand why I was so close to them. And it was really because I needed the free internet at school and their computers to get my assignments done. But I was blessed to have teachers who really cared and looked out. I ran across a few that really did not have the best interest in heart for me, but I did maintain a few that were there for me during that time period. So I came out of 7th grade and I said, okay, Deja, we're going to 8th grade. It's your last year at this school. What are you going to do? How are we going to move forward to make sure that you're not homeless anymore? As if I could do anything at 14 years old. In my brain, I was responsible for getting us out of homelessness. So I went to 8th grade homeless. Me and my mom, and we still had our car, and we still were off and on at different places, renting and some staying on people's couches and different things like that, but we were still homeless. And so I found myself really depressed. Now I'm looking for an outlet, I'm looking for something to do, I don't know what to do. So, we're thumbing through to try to figure out different things. During that time period, I am slightly funny, in my own personal opinion. I laugh at myself, it's okay. So we joined the drama department at our church, and we went there, and we would go there after school. I don't know why, but I got out at 4 o'clock. I don't do that anymore. But I used to get out of school at 4 o'clock, and we would go there, and that would kind of be my outlet to breathe and to just feel human and to feel like I actually had a place to live when I really didn't. And so that helped me, and so I got to stand on stage, and people got to see me and clap for me and make me feel like I was alive again. And And then after that, we moved forward to 9th grade. So now this is high school. This is a big deal. People are gonna remember me. People are gonna know my name. My hair is really distinct. People are gonna be like, okay, the girl with the dreads, she was homeless all 4 years, like, whoa. People are gonna know me. So I decided that, okay, it's your 8th grade year, you're going into 9th grade, what are you gonna do? Now's your time to shine. You gotta make something happen. Nothing happened. So I went into high school, 9th grade, freshman year, homeless. Once more again, as I told myself I would not be homeless. I was homeless. I then had to find another outlet. My outlet was softball. I was pretty good. So freshman year, I played softball, and how is a homeless girl getting to her softball games and sweating and stinking at softball games and doesn't have anywhere to live? Like, that's disgusting, right? It's pretty gross. So I had a family member, an aunt, who would allow me to come grab a shower, a little 5-minute shower, and we'd talk for about 2 minutes. And I would get a shower there, and I couldn't stay there, but I'd get a shower, and then we'd go back in our car, and we'd figure out somewhere to stay. And during that time, we were in shelters, we were in our car, a little bit of both. And so if you haven't noticed through my story, every year I'm telling myself that I'm responsible and we have to find something to do because homelessness cannot go any further. So after my freshman year, I made it through. No one knew. Thank God. I made some friends. You know, we laughed a little bit. We enjoyed going down to Georgetown and having some fun. But nonetheless, I made it out of 9th grade year with no one knowing my story or nobody knowing what I've gone through, and made it to 10th grade year. This was serious, because now I'm an upperclassman, so I'm not a little freshman, so people are actually gonna care who I am. So I actually did make it from 9th grade year to 10th grade year not homeless anymore. And so that summer was a big deal. I was in summer school, I was playing softball, it was a lot going on. And so there was a duration of time where I was separated from my mom, and she went on and she was trying to make sure that we could secure some housing for my sophomore year. And she did so. She secured some employment and some housing, and so we moved forward from there, and I was no longer homeless. So that was my duration of time with homelessness. It was not fun, it was not cool, but it did teach me a huge lesson, and it also helped me to declare my major. And I am now a senior, so I did make it through high school, and it was pretty stressful. But I am now a senior. I actually applied to this school, so it's pretty cool. But yeah, so I am trying my best to succeed. That is my story. That's how I'm hoping to, get in school and everything, and to just share what I've been through. And homelessness doesn't really have a face, so y'all probably didn't think that I was ever homeless. Most people don't, but just know, I hope we broke any myths about homelessness. And once again, my name is Deja. Thank you. I'm back. Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't introduce the next speaker. Sorry about that. The next speaker is Resurrection. She has a powerful story. So please welcome her with a round of applause.
Hello, everyone. Hello. Okay. My name is Resurrection, and I'm excited to be here. You all are here for a late class, right? So, or not class. You're here because you want to be here? Well, y'all are awesome. Well, I'm going to share just a little bit about my story and try to summarize it for you. And then I believe after I finish speaking, we're going to kind of break off into a panel. So we like questions. So please make sure that you write down a few questions so that we can answer questions for you at the end, okay? So for me, I became homeless. I had been a business owner, an entrepreneur, and I really feel that I was born to be an entrepreneur. I cannot stand a 9-to-5. And so I owned this really beautiful massage center. I have a degree in massage therapy, and own this healing center, really. 2,000 square feet. It was something I had an opportunity to erect. So many of you draw. I can't draw. So this was kind of my picture, my portrait, where I was able to actually design it, have them to knock down walls, build up walls, and to paint it the way that I wanted it painted. I had an art gallery to connect with me, and we partnered. And the art gallery came in and brought pictures that were worth thousands of dollars and hung them on the walls that were just painted beautifully. So people used to come into the massage center just to sit and just be in a healing space. It was really, really beautiful. Loved it. And I was able to have the massage center and then also move into a 3,000 square foot house, 2-car garage. How many of you live in a house or grew up in a house? Okay, how many of you grew up in a house that had a garage? It's just something awesome about having your own garage. And so we had a 2-car garage, and we can kind of just pull in. I also had 2 Rottweilers called Zeus and Zoe. And I was a single mom, and we had 2-level. It was very beautiful. If you think of, anybody have bamboo? I don't know, does North Carolina have bamboo? We had bamboo in the back. So for the first couple months of living in the house, I thought it rained every morning, but it was actually the bamboo swaying back and forth. So it was really, really beautiful to wake up to. I would drink tea, and so I was kind of in a place in life where I felt like, I was secure, and that things were really taking off, and I had finally sort of realized my dream, and I was able to go from here, and I could only go forward. I could only go up. So many of you are kind of in a position where you're thinking, okay, I'm preparing for life. And, I was in that place where I felt like things were finally where I wanted them to be. And so, things were going extremely well. I had several thousand clients. Things were going well. And then what happened was I had some good months. I had some great months. I had too many not so good months, okay? And in this country, most people are living paycheck to paycheck. Well, small business owners are often living client to client. And so, I'm gonna let the train go by. And so for me, living client to client was interesting because I didn't come from money. I didn't have a reserve. I had no one to call. And so it was a very difficult time when I really needed that extra cash, whether it was for an employee or whether it was just to take care of bills for the next month or what have you. And so over time, not so many good months sort of added up. And what happens? What happens when you have too many not so good months? You fall on your debt. So I had to close. So I closed my massage center. And what happens after you close the massage center? You're in debt. No income, because I was the CEO. So, I had to close my home. And my home foreclosed. And so as a result of that, we ended up being homeless. My child and I ended up being homeless. That was a difficult part because I had to ask people for help who really may not have wanted to help me. And I didn't realize that there was a correlation between what had happened in my childhood and what I was experiencing as an adult. So let me just kind of take you back for just a moment. I remember being 4 years old, and I remember it being a beautiful summer night, and there were lightning bugs. Is it lightning bugs or lightning bugs? You know when they light up? Lightning bugs? Okay. So, and I just really remember always wanting to chase the lightning bugs. So I was short, I was young. And I remember that I was 4 years old. It was summertime, beautiful night, the perfect night. And I remember that there were lightning bugs. There were some people visiting from North Carolina, ironically. And they had come up. I found out now as an adult that the gentlemen that had come up were actually ex-boyfriends of some of my eldest sister, and so and brothers. And so they came up in this Thunderbird. I never forget the car. I like cars. And I went in the house, and there was someone in the bathroom. And I don't remember who it was. It was either my mother or my sister who were in the bathroom. I have to sit and kind of go back to that place. But someone was in the bathroom, and this guy was sitting on the couch. And he said, "Come here, come sit on my lap." And what happened at that moment changed my entire life. And unfortunately, I was sexually abused. And a scar was left in me from that moment until I was 9 years old. Now, the only reason I know the timeline of the scar is because I went through some trouble in school, and they wanted to know what was going on with me, and they ordered for me to go and to have a medical doctor to check me out. They also put that I was sexually abused in my medical records, and they put it in my records, at school. So I was judged, and every time I went to school or every time I had contact with a teacher going from grade to grade, they had information about me before I could even open my mouth. And this is kind of how I went through school. And I did act out. Maya Angelou in I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, her response to being sexually abused was that she did not speak. She was mute for 5 years. Well, that is not my story at all. I don't understand how she did that. But my response was anger. I was very angry. And I went through, this experience. And as I got older, there was additional abuse that I endured. I've been raped and different things that had happened. And as an adult, being an entrepreneur, everything going well, I'm not thinking that my world is going to fall apart, right? I mean, who thinks that? And so after I became homeless and I was going through all of these different things, this crisis, I actually did not realize that I had no family to turn to. Now, my mother is amazing. She's always been a great mother, and so she did what she could do. But when we had our house and closed our house, she actually was with us. So she was displaced and had to find somewhere to go. So she wasn't able to say, "Okay, come on home." How many of you, if something happened today or tomorrow, you could go home? Well, my story is more similar to someone that might have grown up in foster care and aged out, and maybe they don't have any family or friends to go back home to. And so that was my situation, but I didn't know that at the time because I'm not a foster child, and that wasn't my experience. So I thought that maybe I could go back home. And what I learned is that as a result of the abuse that, took place in my home and, some things that also had occurred with me, that there was just these dysfunctional, broken relationships. Nothing was healed. Everything was left on the table. And how many know that when you're trying to figure out where you're going to feed your child or where you're going to take a shower, you're not exactly trying to mend relationships and try to figure out what's wrong with, your family. At that time, you're saying, "I just need to know where we're going to sleep tonight." And that's what crisis kind of looks like. And so I always tell people to not wait until some tragedy happens. In some families, they wait till a funeral and see each other, and then they try to mend broken hearts. But I also say that homelessness is a great crisis, and if you are working on being healthy and healed and whole, then when something happens, family members aren't looking, to sort of be down and out. They're able to depend on each other and love each other through the hard times, right? And so for me, after, being homeless for a while and just figuring that there's something it just doesn't make sense that I wouldn't have anywhere to go. And I would do this for my family. If they need somewhere to go, I would have opened my doors because that's just who I am. And that's also how we were raised. My mother is the biggest giver I know. It's actually, I'm sometimes like, stop it. And so for me, kind of going through this experience, I realized that after going to a shelter And having this woman tell me to fill out this form, the form included questions that she wanted me to answer about sexual abuse. And after having a conversation with her, she said she wanted me to fill out the form. I wasn't required to fill it out, but if I did not fill it out, basically it looked like insubordination. But it was a volunteer form. But you have to fill it out. But you don't have to fill it out. And so I chose not to fill it out because when I asked her why would I fill it out, she told me that it was because donors would look at the information in order to give more money to the shelter. And I said, well, my name is Resurrection. I don't want I don't want donors looking at my information. If I'm going to tell my story, it's going to be me who tells my story. And not someone looking at a piece of paper. I went through that my whole life, as I told you about school. So they kicked me out of the shelter because they said I was too ambitious. That was the reason. And I began to do some digging. You know, that experience really stuck with me. And the digging where I kind of found myself was that 97% of homeless mothers have experienced sexual abuse or rape. That's an astounding number, 97%. And after learning that, I realized, okay, my suspicions were correct. There is a specific correlation between being sexually abused and being an adult homeless person. And it could be, like in my situation, that things are broken and dysfunctional, and some people are ready to heal, but other people are not. You know, people are in different places in their life. Or, you know, it could be that you don't have family around, or that you have trust issues. There's all of these different reasons why this could be taking place. But the bottom line is that, yes, there is a correlation between child sexual abuse and adult homelessness. So I began to speak with the National Coalition for the Homeless, really to share a message that I really have had a desire to be healed and whole from the things that I had experienced. And so that is my focal point. That is really what I live for now, is to help other people to overcome the effects of child sexual abuse, including homelessness and poverty. So with that being said, thank you so much for listening, and we're just going to open up the panel so that if you have any questions, you can feel free to ask now. Thank you.
I want to start off, thank you again, and it was one question I didn't get back to. It's a man asked about addiction as being the primary cause, right? And I forgot to get back to it. So mental health, substance abuse, and alcoholism are barely cracking the top 5 in terms of primary reasons that people experience homelessness. And in a lot of cases, we find that people begin to use alcohol or drugs to excess after becoming homeless as a coping mechanism. Certainly not a coping skill, but anyway. So, what's the next question? Yes.
Yeah. Am I loud enough? They were just really understanding. You know, I don't know your teaching style or anything like that, and so a lot of my teachers, I just reached out to them, and it was basically more on a personal level. I saw them and there was some type of connection, you know, maybe it was our hair, or maybe it was just looking at them and seeing, okay, these people are understanding and they may, you know, understand my story. But with none of the teachers that I've ever had in high school, middle school, or anything, they don't know my story. They were just there to help me with assignments or, you know, a little extra lesson when I wasn't able to be in school or something. So.
And also, real quick, I think as part of McKinney-Vento, wasn't as established as a homeless liaison for each school district, and so if you're a teacher, to know that person would be good.
Yep, The McKinney-Vento Act, passed in 1987, established the educational needs and rights of homeless children. Every school district in the country has a full-time staff person who's a homeless liaison, and his or her job is to make sure that young people like Deja get into school, get all the necessary paperwork, the shots, support services. So I would encourage you to connect up with your homeless liaison in this community and wherever you're going to be teaching.
Yes. Let's see. I was homeless for 7 years, and most of that time I was homeless on the streets. I only stayed in the shelters when it was scary cold out. Once in a while I stay in what we call abandonminiums, which is a vacant home. But most of the time I was homeless on the streets, 7 years, yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm glad you asked. And yeah, my folks were around. I was very self-conscious about being homeless. My parents knew that I had lost that job. They knew that my house burned down. They knew I didn't have an address, but they didn't really know fully, my circumstances, because I wasn't entirely forthcoming with them. Yeah, I'm going to see him next week for Thanksgiving, and it's going to be great. But there are a lot of homeless people who have lost a support network and don't have anyone at all.
Resurrection, your life has a happy ending recently. Could you share some of the good news that happened to you?
Oh, yes. So I went to a shelter, an adult shelter, and I didn't know exactly where I was going, but I felt led to go to this shelter. And I went to the shelter, slept outside for a week because they wouldn't let me in, even though they had beds. And when I finally got into the shelter, this guy was like staring me down. And I was not going to a shelter for a man, but long story short, he looked at me. Anybody seen that movie Avatar? Anybody? So you know the part when he says, "I see you." So that's how I felt when I met him, and his name is Devin, and so we actually just got married. August 28th was the 50th anniversary of the March on Washington, and so it was the anniversary of the I Had a Dream speech. So the theme of our wedding was I Had a Dream and It Came True. And we got married at the Jefferson Memorial in Washington, D.C. And yes, you can say "oh" because it's awesome.
And Resurrection, instead of having a big liquor-induced party after your wedding, what did you do?
We actually went to Franklin Park in D.C. and we fed the homeless. That was our reception.
Wow.
In your wedding gown?
In my wedding gown, and it was actually in the Washington Post the next day. So they came and covered it. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, who would like to start?
I think one of the biggest tips is, and I do a training to help people to acquaint themselves with homelessness so they'll be compassionate when they go out and serve the homeless. And one of the things that we say is assume nothing. Assume absolutely nothing. People will be open to share their story with you, but if you go out confident and then you assume nothing about that person, meaning you're not judgmental, then you open a door to be able to hear their story. And you never know, you may be able to help. So the second tip I would give is that you already have some resources in mind, and not just shelters. Shelters are overrun with people, and they often have 2 and 3 months wait, no matter where you are in the country. So not just shelters, but maybe finding some other resources that would be useful for people who are homeless.
And I could add to that, we're learning tonight. And one of the greatest things you can do is to stay well informed on the issues about homelessness, especially in your local area or where you're from. And, find out what services are there, but also what services are missing. And find out about pending legislation in the municipality or jurisdiction from which you come, and what's going on. Are laws selectively enforced against people experiencing homelessness? But, that's a little specific. In general, is to follow your heart.
This is the homeless season in America between Thanksgiving and Christmas. Americans, they think a lot about people in need when it gets cold during the holiday season, but homelessness is really a year-round issue. So just don't help the homeless on Thanksgiving Day, make it a year-round issue. Right. I started to do volunteer work with the homeless in the 1970s, and I can only say that volunteering at a shelter or a soup kitchen is great. An act of mercy, acts of kindness are great. But if that's all that you do, passing out sandwiches in the downtown park in Raleigh, I promise you, you will be doing that 40 years from now, volunteering at your local soup kitchen. So it's incumbent on all of us to try to attack the root causes of poverty. Continue to volunteer, get to know people like Resurrection, Deja, and John on a first-name basis, but volunteerism alone will not solve the issue. And if you're thinking of serving turkey to the homeless on Thanksgiving Day, we already have enough volunteers for the most part. In Washington, D.C., the nation's capital, the most powerful city in the world, possibly, we only have a right to shelter during the winter months when it gets below 32 degrees or below. So if it's 33, homeless people are forced to sleep outside. Imagine that. Imagine if we did that to animal shelters. We let the animals run loose when it got warm. So homelessness is a year-round issue. Let's not let homeless people freeze to death, but just giving people shelter will not solve homelessness.
I would just add one more thing. A lot of times we think of, food and clothes. Well, the reality is that, first of all, if someone is street homeless, then they're limited with the food that you give them because they don't have anywhere to store food. So they'll be able to come around to get a sandwich, but they'll be hungry in another 4 hours, and they'll have to find a way to eat, and a place to go to eat as well. So that doesn't necessarily solve the problem. It's important to food, to provide food, but these are temporary solutions, and I think it's important that you all kind of think about how you can be the solution provider for homelessness, and housing is really important. So there was this idea in New York where they decided to put together a plan for homeless people to be housed first and to see how people would respond once they were housed. What they found is that politicians found that they saved thousands of dollars because they were able to house homeless people. They became stable, which means they became employable, which means they were able to also have sound mind and come back to themselves if they were traumatized by their experiences. There were just a lot of different things that were positive that happened from housing homeless people first, rather than looking to give them clothes that they can't, they're gonna walk around with on their back or leave somewhere. You know what I mean? So just understanding that there are temporary solutions, but a permanent solution would be housing.
Thanks.
Anything else? Yes, in the back. And then you. Best advice you can give someone who is experiencing homelessness? Don't give up, that this is not the end, it's the beginning. You get to start over. There's people working jobs that they hate, that they find miserable, and they're making too much money to be able to throw it all away and start over. So take this as an opportunity, as a gift, and not that you have to, that this is the end and you'll never be able to overcome it. You get to start over.
My question is for all of you. How does faith play a role in your lives individually? Again, I used to think you got home from church, but the rest of you have like a spiritual life.
How does faith play a role in overcoming homelessness? Yeah. Okay. I'm summarizing. Okay.
Sure. For me, I think that really my faith was made stronger through the actions of people whose faith and belief system led them towards showing me kindness and support so that I could get through the very low times. And it was some tests along the way, but really overall, the experience of homelessness for me, I think, only serves to strengthen my faith.
You. Oh, he wanted me to answer?
Everybody.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry. I think that it was challenged. I've grown up Christian, non-denominational. So I think it was just definitely challenged with me being so young. I was just like, why? I don't understand. Now, I think that it was kind of more so on the lines of a blessing. It kind of just showed me who God really was and that I was never really alone, if you will. So, yeah.
Sure.
Faith is important for me. I think for me, I never questioned whether God was real or why God, or, it was never a matter of whether God existed. I never was angry. It wasn't a, is God real? It was a, when God is this going to be over? So what's your plan here? It was more of that. I was questioning what, I needed to do to be able to overcome what I was experiencing. So it was never a blame thing, and I never wavered in my faith, but it was more of me wanting to really hear clearly why I was in this situation and what I needed to do to overcome it. So it made, I think it really propelled me into what God has called me to do on the earth. Yes. You like pointing?
I know that many students from Elon in the past have assisted at allied churches, the shelter. But for those who are here and are not aware of it, it's not only the big cities that have homeless. Recently, the average attendance of residents there at allied churches has been about 70, and I learned that last week 14 of those were under the age of 12. And they're always looking for volunteers also.
Thank you. Yes.
One more time.
He said, what state were we homeless, and how did where we live affect our homelessness?
Okay. At first, I was in a state of denial. But after I realized that I was homeless, I realized I was homeless in one of the places in the country where housing is the least affordable. And so that presented a special challenge, because what I didn't have was I didn't have a relevant marketable skill set at the time when I was trying to escape homelessness. And there are resources to help provide training, but oftentimes the training is towards something that doesn't result in the ability to make a living wage. And so that was a special challenge in the area that I was in.
And I'll just say, have you all seen the article that's online? I believe I shared it this morning on Facebook, where Walmart employees put a sign up, and there's two bins, you saw it, and it says, please, I'm messing it up, but please donate to our Thanksgiving so that we can have a meal together or whatever with our families. And so, you know, I'm not using Walmart alone, but there are many places that people work full-time. Even if they work part-time, there are people who are working and they are homeless because they don't make a livable wage. So we're from the D.C. area, and I experienced homelessness in Maryland, D.C., and Virginia. And the bottom line is that you have to make enough money in order for you to have an apartment. You have to overcome barriers that everybody who's homeless has different barriers. Some people may have an eviction because they, you know, were kicked out of their home. Well, when they're ready to move into a home, they have to take care of that eviction. And if it's thousands of dollars, that in and of itself can keep someone homeless. Some people have felonies. They've made mistakes in their life and they can't, you know, there's apartment buildings that are preventing people from being able to get apartments if they have, you know, a felony. And so there are all these different barriers that people experience, but being in Maryland, D.C., and Virginia, they all have different rules. In Maryland, if you don't work 30 hours a week, you're not getting help at all, period. And so what happens for a family that can't find a job? You know, in D.C., I would never go to a shelter in D.C. Would do it. And and then in Virginia, we were able to overcome homelessness, and I'm from Virginia. So, but that livable wage is very, very important, and then affordable housing. So.
We got a call a couple weeks ago from the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation inviting the National Coalition for the Homeless to send a representative to be part of a congressional briefing. You would assume that the guy who's worked on homeless issues for 40 years would be the one invited, but there's a person on this panel that on this coming Friday will be speaking in front of members of Congress and staffers, and I'll let Resurrection identify who the person is.
It's my daughter, Deja.
So watch for her on C-SPAN.
Y'all didn't know she was my daughter, did you? No, so you're saying because she's my daughter or because of the Black Caucus? I think they're stuck. I thought that was a good time to tell you. So she's my daughter.
She's speaking on a panel,
Speaking on the, right.
very appropriate, on youth homelessness on Friday, and so it's quite an honor, and it should be really cool.
And we're very excited. This is her first opportunity to speak before Congress. So. Any other questions, guys?
You had a question, yeah.
Yes.
Well, let me say that faith-based organizations actually provide more shelter beds and services than all the government-funded programs. Our federal government is only spending $3 billion a year to help the homeless for the whole country. You could spend that amount in California and there would still be homeless folks.
There's the answer.
You can't follow that.
So, thank God for faith-based organizations. We would be screwed.
I think we have time for maybe one more question.
Anybody?
Okay, great. There's literature about the National Coalition. If you'd like to get we just redesigned our website. We have the coolest website in the country, even though I know nothing about designing websites. It's nationalhomeless.org. If you'd like to get our newsletter, You can sign up. There's some notebooks. Just give your name and email address. We have internships available at the National Coalition. When you graduate from college, we don't care what your grade point average is. We have 60 AmeriCorps Vista positions available working for the National Coalition in 10 different states in Washington, D.C. So if you can't find a job right away, come to work for the National Coalition. It's the way to get your foot in the door. And if you have to do a research paper on homelessness, we're the people to talk to. So let's give our panel one final hand.